As a lead into the drawing template, we're going to go back through the creation of the part inch and the part metric part template. So as default, you'll have part, assembly, and drawing. Going to pick the standard part. And the types of things that we talked about previously, we'll check in the options. So on the main screen here, I don't see my blue origin. I will always get the red origin when I enter a sketch. But if we want to see the blue origin, then next to the hide all types, little eyeball, you're going to find the down arrow. And we will come down to view origins, fourth one on the left. And when I turn that on, that'll show the default origin. And so that hits the Control 7, that kind of puts it in the center of the screen. Let's go into the options and see what was set. So under General, there are a few of them in here that are kind of interesting. If you try single command per pick, after you complete a line, you will have to tell it line again, or arc, or circle, or whatever the next piece of geometry is. So that one remains unchecked. We do want to input a dimension value. So after you place the dimension, the modify box comes up and asks you for the number. Show thumbnail graphics in Windows Explorer. If you have a large folder with all of your SOLIDWORKS files in it, that can take a little while to populate. So sometimes it's handy to turn that off, especially if you have a slower graphics card. We do want to see the confirmation corner. Yes, I want to see the property manager. Auto size, it depends on what I'm doing. I'll come in and turn that off on occasion if it's splitting the auto size and the property manager, and I really want to see more of one of the tabs than another. Let's see, enable the feature expert, so if it can't make a solution, it will try to assist us. That's pretty good. The SOLIDWORKS Customer Experience Improvement Program, if you checked yes, and you want to go back and uncheck it, help make SOLIDWORKS products better, that's where you turn it on or off. Under the drawings, let's see, duplicate, model notes, model dimensions. We unchecked mark all parts, which is the reason my dimensions are purple and yours may still be black. Automatically scale to drawing views, those are all good. And I don't see anything here that really jumps out at me that we need to turn on. Display style kind of varies. Went through the tutorial from SOLIDWORKS, and I think they had the tangent edges removed. So when we get some tangent edges, we'll have to turn that on and off and see what it does. The area hatch and fill is kind of a legacy item from, well, the way back before materials were added to the list. Performance, show contents while dragging, allow update when opening drawings. And some of these are when you notice the action of the screen is not performing the way that you want. The drawing colors, we're going to use document scene background that enables us to come up to the heads-up display and pick out of the appearances, scenes, and get our background. I do like the specified color for drawings, and we have to go look for that. So drawings, paper color. Right now that's showing as a gray. I'm going to go ahead and just switch it to white so we can see if there's any difference. It gives a little contrast when we're looking at the background. Specified colors. Sketching, we auto-rotate view normal to sketch plane on sketch creation and sketch edit. Brings us back into normal to the sketch. Use fully defined sketches. No, there's going to be times where it would be nice to have fully defined sketches. There's going to be times where we're going to need to get out of that sketch and do something else without it being fully defined. Let's see. And then the prompt to close sketch, if we, in the confirmation corner, hit the checkbox, it accepts the changes and closes. If you hit the exit prompt to close, it says, are you sure? So if I'm doing a lot of design, at times I'll turn that off. Create sketch on new part. No, because it comes in and it doesn't really ask you what plane you want the sketch on. It just goes right to the front plane and says, oh, you're in a sketch. Override dimensions? No. Anything that overrides, we want to manually change dimensions. We want to be the ones to make those decisions. And some different ways of entering values. Relations, we're enabling snapping to model geometry, automatic relations. And try the grid, but grid is one that I'm not fond of. It is too limiting. We want to be fairly freeform. Displays. Alright, so dynamic highlight from graphics view. That would be a good one to turn on. And we're showing the reference triad, which is down here in the lower left of the screen. So I don't use that an awful lot, but it is nice to be able to see the XYZ orientation, so leave it on. And then breadcrumbs, that shows the kind of the trail that created those properties. They show up as part of the flyout, so we'll leave those on as well. Selections, selection through transparency. There's a shift key, shift select that we'd have to do to select the transparent part if that's on. Performance, we'll come back to that one. Assemblies, we'll get into. External references, the default templates. So if we create these templates and want them to be the defaults for new documents, then we can override or change these locations, those files, and put in our own. Or we can just tell it the prompt and it will take us into what amounts to the new document folder, and we'll be able to select the file type that we want. File locations. So a lot of items, at some point we will be interested in changing over to our cloud drive, whether it's OneDrive or Dropbox, Google Drive. And I would like to get my most used system files out of the 10-level deep SOLIDWORKS documents, SOLIDWORKS program file, places where they would be have to have a higher level of permission to make those modifications. So I have a couple of document templates right now. They're in program data and program files. So the tutorials are in program files and program data. So not quite ready to do that just yet. I haven't created a folder. At least I don't think I have. So other items of note in here are going to be our custom property files, the design library when we get a little further in, sheet metal if we're doing the gauge tables, sheet formats definitely we'd want to be able to find those, and then the weldment property or profiles. Okay, so just a few of the items that we're going to go back and take a look at some point. All right, so in the Feature Manager, scrolling items into the view, yes. Don't really want to name all of the features. Dynamic highlight is on. The transparent flyout in the feature manager design tree. Allow component files. That's more of an assembly type deal, but no, we don't want to make any accidental renaming, especially where external references come into play. Enable preview of hidden components. So if you hover over it, they should still pop up. All right, and then previously we went through this. So blocks are automatic, design binder, automatic, annotations. Solid bodies went from a automatic to show. So that's why I have the folder up here instead of, what did we have? History and sensors. We're not using those right now. So with the reduced screen to do the YouTube recording, really just don't want those being shown. So surface bodies come up automatic, tables, favorites. Okay, we have equations. Yes, we want to see the materials. We want to see the default planes, front, top, and right. Our origin is a show. And then mate references come up automatically in the assembly as soon as we start creating them. Design tables are automatic as soon as we create them. And then graphics bodies would be an STL file that we're not trying to do a translation on. We just want to see kind of the pretty picture. Bin box increments, if you want to have the arrows move in smaller or larger increments. View, the all-important reverse mouse wheel zoom direction if you are used to AutoCAD, and zooming up is in and zooming down is, okay, whichever way that goes. Zoom to fit when changing to standard views, so it will go to the envelope or the outside of the parts. And then how fast is everything happening? Right now, they're all pretty fast. Backup and recover. Save auto recover information every 10 minutes. That's probably a good idea for now. When I'm doing a lot of design, really intensive, I pretty much turn the auto recover off. And I also turn off the backups. And I set the reminder for maybe every 10 or 15 minutes. And then I just get in the habit of hitting Control S. Touch mode. So when we're on a laptop or in some cases a tablet style computer that can take the touch, how is it going to interact? Hole Wizard and Toolbox. Alright, so the location for the Hole Wizard and Toolbox folder. And if we're on a network with multiple users, we'd probably want to point that to our cloud location or to a location that's shared on the network by everybody. So we're pulling consistent data. If I make a modification to the database, I want everybody to be able to see that. The File Explorer, what's going to be shown in the task pane. The SolidWorks search box, so what's going to be listed, and the settings. Collaborations, multi-user environment, messages, so just things that occurred. Importing, general file format. This used to be under the open, or strictly under the open, and export strictly under the save as. So things like the Parasolid. We have settings for the version. Typically, if we're generating a Parasolid, we want to go back a couple of versions because we may be going to previous software. So another program that is a year or two old. And so we would try to go back maybe 3 or 4 versions just to make sure that it's compatible. Going over the document properties, we have the drafting standard is ISO, and we can make changes to these settings and then save to an external file, and then load that external file from system to system. So if I'm on my work computer, I can have the same standard settings as on my laptop. Things like the annotation, a lot of background information. So if I wanted to change the font from the default Century Gothic, we could update to a more contemporary. Century Gothic has been the font for as long as I've used SolidWorks. Dimensions, everything that you want to change about dimensions. The important one here is the dual dimensions and the display, that in certain drawings where we'd want to show inch and metric on the same drawing, this is going to be for every sheet. It is a global setting within that document. And since these are drafting standards, most of these are going to apply to the drawing, not necessarily to the part of the assembly, but it kind of varies based on our selection. Alright, so all the different types. Virtual sharps. I like the witness marks. You can change it to a plus, a star, dot, or none. Table settings. Dim Expert, we're going to get into a little bit later. Dim Expert in manufacturing or model-based definitions. Had manufacturing on the mind. Let's see if it's still up here. The MBD works very similar to Dim Expert, and Dim Expert is where we can go in and start setting tolerances as default. Detailing, like the cosmetic threads, no, I don't want to see shaded. If you have graphics issues or have a weak graphics card, the shaded cosmetic threads cause some interesting results. So for the most part, I'm going to leave those turned off, but it basically makes a pretty picture. We're always going to display the text at the same time, otherwise we zoom in, zoom out, and text can't read it, or it just takes over everything. Grids and snaps, if you display the grid, and we'll go through this process, but right now, major grid spacing is 1 inch, then minor lines per major is 4, and snap points per minor is 1. So pretty much we're setting this to snap every 1/4 of an inch. All right, so if I was to say there were 10 lines per major, that would be 0.1. And if there were 10 snap points per minor, that would be 0.01 inches. So we'll come back to the grid here in a second. And then we get to units. And units is the same as coming down here to inch, pounds, and seconds, clicking, having the default meters, kilograms, seconds, centimeters, millimeters, and inches, or having it take you directly to this document properties units tab. All right, so right now we are in 2 decimal places. So for my template, I'm going to set to 3 decimal places. And we're going to stay in inch, pounds, and seconds. That's pretty much all I need to do. The thing of note is if I wanted fractional inches and inches, I can come over to inches, and then the fraction is the lowest denominator, so let's go with a 1/16 of an inch. Okay, maybe not a 46. 1/16 of an inch. And then make sure to round to the nearest fraction, otherwise it converts to decimal by default. Alright, so if I turn on dual dimensions back up here under the dimensions, now I'll have inches and decimal and fraction. And then it'll be rounded to the nearest 16th. Model display, more colors, can assign to different features, geometry. We'll leave those default. And again, legacy material properties, what's going on in the material folder is way more functional than material properties. Image quality. How circular do you want your circles? And if your graphics card is struggling, then we'll go a little bit lower. If you want a little better resolution, then you can go higher. And then for sheet metal, different sheet metal settings, weldment settings, plain displays if you want base colors and transparencies. And then last is configurations. Add, rebuild, unsave, mark to new configuration. We'll get to those a little later. So a lot of these are modal. Once we set them, they're going to stay session to session. but they're not necessarily, not all of them are necessarily written into the template. So customizing, some things that we might want to add. There was a question about being able to add relations without doing the control select. So let's see if we can find that one and add it to our heads-up display. Or we can add it to the command manager, whichever one is available. So if I go into Customize, this is all of the toolbars. And we're going to look for commands. And let's see, was there... Well, before I get into that, we want to show tooltips. So as I hover over one of these, it's telling me what it is. There's my tooltip, line, sketches a line. Block command manager and toolbars, yes. I didn't realize that was off, so yes, I want to block that in place. What that does is keep it from accidentally being drug off of the top somewhere else. Icon size is minimal. Depending on your screen size, you can try different sizes to have different view of all of the icons. And then context, show on selections, show quick and quick mate, and show and shortcut menu. Alright, so enable the command manager, and we're using large buttons with text. If we disable the command manager, this goes away and we're going to see a bunch of smaller toolbars that kind of have a legacy or were prior to the command manager coming on the scene. The shortcut bars, and we'll do some customizing with the F button. But any of these various toolbars can be modified, and modified in the basis of a part, an assembly, a drawing, and I think that's a layout sketch. I have to go back and check that one. Alright, so the commands, we are inside of the sketch, so let's see if there's sketch tools. And unfortunately, we are just going to kind of drag over top of these. And I want to get the heads up where I can see it. Alright, so I said I was looking for the add relation. Or one of the ones that I've used is split entities. And rather than going all the way through the folders, so there's segments, and there's split entities. So I can drag split entities out to the heads-up display and add it. That should be mirror. Okay, I didn't see that there. Let's see one in relations. Alright, we'll look through the rest of these real quick on the menus. These are the pull-down menus, and we can customize the items in the pull-down menus. Most of those are okay. Keyboard shortcuts. Notice that you can print this list or copy this list, and this is all of the control functions for all of the commands. The mouse gestures, if you hold down the right mouse button and drag, I think it's to the left, to the right, then these are the mouse gestures that you'll get for shortcuts. And then the customization, being able to return to the default and go back from changes. All right, so I wanted to find. Let's see if we come over to the search and we go to commands. Let's see if we have an add relations and make. Okay, there's not one of those. All right, but I'm still not seeing the add relation command. So let's go into a sketch so I can identify. And it is add relation. And what that does is the selected entities come up. As soon as I select entities, then it will show me the available relations, and I can add that to the group without having to do the control select. So go back to customize. I was thinking one of these had a search utility on it. Okay, well, I'm not going to spend a lot of time searching. If I find it, we'll post it and tell you where it ended up at. Now, there's view sketch relations. That's the on-off. Standard views. Well, wanted to add a standard view. There's the isometric, trimetric. Okay, so it's probably right in front of me and I overlooked it, but that gives us enough to get started. And again, when I find that symbol, then I will add it to my list. All right, so I've gone through and made some changes. We've some of these are going to be modal, and we're going to need to do two things. We're going to save as, and I mentioned this before that when you select for a part template, it's going to jump to the default location, Program Data SOLIDWORKS 2018 template. And so this is, I'm just going to name it inch. I don't know that I'm going to keep this out. And since I was typing and not paying attention, okay, what is it? I think I was in the save as type. Okay, apparently I had picked the save as type, so it was navigating to the different file types. Right, so there's an inch, and then I want to come down to inch, pounds, and seconds. We're going to go to millimeters, grams, and seconds, but since I have that dual dimension as inches, we're going to switch it back over to fractional, or from fractional over to decimal, and for my millimeters, grams, and seconds, we'll have 2 decimal places and 3 decimal places for inch for our dual dimension. And then I can save as and make one metric. Okay, so now that I have a part, now kind of move my origin from the center of the screen. So we'll see if that comes up or if it resets itself. And then one of the items under the SOLIDWORKS resources, and about halfway down here, you're going to see Copy Settings Wizard. It's going to be a good idea to save these settings to a file, and either on one of your cloud drives or onto a flash drive. We're saving the settings for SOLIDWORKS 2018. And the location, we're going to navigate over to my Google Drive folder. Maybe. All right, to my assignments folder then. And I like to try and determine which computer this is on. So maybe this is laptop settings. All right, so I could have different settings for the desktop to help keep those arranged. All of the system options, toolbar layout, keyboard shortcuts, mouse gestures, menu customization, save views. Hit save, and it's written the file. Now if something happens, I can recover without having to go through all of the options again. So those finish out my templates. Make sure that you close these. Any sketch, line geometry that you put in and save back to this template remains with the template. So we're going to close. And then when I go to check, File New, So there is my inch, there's my metric, there's the previous part inch, previous part metric, have those now accessible. All right, so next we'll jump into the assembly.